Hello there, welcome to Inquiring Minds. My name is Doug and I'm back with another Pen Resurrection Sunday video. Last week's Pen Resurrection wasn't successful at bringing this 1941 Eversharp Skyline back from the dead. But this week we have a successful resurrection of this 1947 Parker VS. Although at times it looked like this pen was going to stay dead, it's now a terrific writer that I'm absolutely thrilled about. This resurrection was certainly a roller coaster of emotions, from despair to elation and everywhere in between. It was enough to make you seasick. So stay tuned to see how I turn this bent and gnarly 14-karat gold nib into a buttery smooth 1.1 stub with just a pair of nail clippers and some micro mesh right now. I want to show you how I restored this pen, give a little bit of history, and show its parts and features, measurements, and then do a writing sample. Then I'll give my thoughts about this resurrection. I bought this pen on eBay, and I'd never heard of the Parker VS before, and the nib was rather bent and misshapen, but I thought the pen would give me an opportunity to try my hand at repairing a damaged nib. Here's what the pen looked like when it was delivered. So yet another box that has come probably from eBay, hence the eBay label on it. But the eBay shipping, when it comes from the United States, says it's delivered at the border, and then I get no notification about it for like a week after that, and it ends up in my mailbox or on my front stoop, and I really don't know which one of the many I'm purchasing from eBay it is. So let's find out what this is. It's a Parker VS. I've never heard of this particular pen before, and it's got a gold nib. Looks like it needs some work. Look at that, all bent over. So this will, oh, and a clear plastic feed, the comb type feed. That's very interesting. And it's a button filler. Oh, it'll be interesting to take this apart. That's all aluminum. See if there's a year there. Yeah, there it is. I think that's 3 dots and a 7. That would be the first quarter of 1947. So clear plastic feed from 1947. Very interesting. So we'll have to see how that comes apart, whether my vacuumatic tool will fit that or not. A little bit of a learning curve on this one. Looks like a Parker Challenger in the clip, just like a Parker 51. Same kind of slip cap clutch. So I'm going to learn a little bit about this model before I do any renos on it. And here's what the pen looks like now. I successfully removed the nib, feed, and section, and was able to remove the filling mechanism and the pressure bar. I used a little bit of heat to get the section and the button filler to budge. Here's some time-lapse video of the process I used. Let's see if we can get this apart. I've never taken one of these apart before. It seems to have a J-bar in there, so it must have a sack. It did suck up water earlier. Oh, I can hear that sack in there. Yep, there it is. So it's got a new J-bar. Now, that sack isn't in terrific shape. I might replace it. And then the other piece is the aluminum button. And there it is there. So that could take a little bit of cleaning up. So take that clutch ring off. And now I think I'll take this sack off because I need to get at that feed. Feed's in excellent shape. It doesn't look like this pen has been used at all, except for the fact that it's been dropped. So I want to get that nib out of there so that I can work on it with my smoothing bar. See if we can cut this sack off here. And there's the feed, and it's got a little bit of a siphon tube right there. Oh, it's not really wanting to move. So I think I'll have to knock it out. And there we go. There's that breather tube. Take that out. And there's the nib. We'll polish that up. Try to do a fix. This section is wonky. Misshapen somehow. I don't know why. Barrel seems to be straight. Comes up pretty nicely. So I have my smoothing block, nib, and a little plastic spudger from iFixit for fixing iPhones. I'm going to try to press out those bends in there to try to get that nib straightened. I'm no expert at this, so I might just destroy that nib, but can't make an omelet without breaking a few nibs. So this nib is so badly damaged, there's actually no tipping material on it. Whether it got knocked off, I don't know, but that just looks like gold on the end there. But I've straightened it out a little bit, but it's never going to be normal again. So I'm thinking that I might just cut it off right there. You cut it to where it's about, I don't know, 1 millimeter across, and see where I can make a stub out of it, because this is not going to write the way it is. So there, I just cut it off. It's about 1.3 millimeters, which might actually get me a 1 millimeter line once I've smoothed that out. And I think I cut it on a bit of a left oblique as well, completely by accident. I'll have to grind this down a bit and see whether it actually writes. So I put the nib and feed back in the section and the barrel back on, just to be able to control it a little bit more while I grind this nib a little bit smoother. I'm just trying to knock the edges off it. Looks pretty gnarly because it's bent. Well, if it's a left oblique, it's certainly pointing left. This is 2400 grit micro mesh to get the edges knocked off, and I'll move up through the micro meshes, but I first got to see if it writes. Actually writes very well. So even though it looks gnarly, I think I'll just smooth that out, because there is a lot of feedback right now, of course, because I ground it with 2400. So we'll go up through the grades and we'll see how it comes out. Okay, we're going to try this out again. Gone through all the micro meshes and it looks pretty smooth. Doesn't take much because it's just gold. If that was iridium, that takes much more grinding, but that's just plain gold there. So let's see. This is very nice. I'm liking this pen. Oh my goodness. Okay, now I got to go ahead and restore the rest of this pen and get it working, because that nib is now wonderful. Okay, so I've taken the nib and put it back in the section after polishing the barrel and the section, and I sanded down the clear feed to make it slimmer when I put it inside the section, because I don't want to put any more pressure on that plastic since I already have this crack in the section. So I don't want that to leak, and I don't want it to spread any further. And I've got the nib and the feed in there, not as far as they were originally, but I think that might work, and so there will be less pressure on that section. Even the barrel has some slight fissure marks on the inside. You have to look at it very, very carefully with a loupe, but this plastic is very brittle, going to resack this. So I have to measure out the sack, put it in there, and mark it to the end of the barrel first. I'm going to cut it. Then put it back inside the clutch on the section, and then measure out where it would come to, about there. So that distance there. Sack on, and close it down. Yeah, that seems to be working pretty well. And try it with the pressure bar in to make sure it fits. Yeah, that seems to work. So we're going to just shellac the nipple. I've cleaned all the shellac off and then sanded it down a bit as well to give it a nice surface. Nice sack spreader. Give it a little bit of a twist. And then a little bit more shellac just on that area right there, just so that there's no leaks. There we go. So I'm going to let that dry before I screw it into the barrel, and then we'll talc this up and put it back in. So now that the shellac is dry, put some TLC on the sack and put it back in the barrel. And just a little bit of a primer on how these button fillers work. That pressure bar side here, that's what it looks like. This is the flat bar side, and that goes up against the sack. This little pointed end here goes into the button at the back of the pen, and then this part presses up against the section when the section's on the pen. So when this is inside the pen and you push on the button, it deflects the thin metal and presses the pressure bar up against the sack, squeezing it. And when you release the pressure, it sucks up ink. So got to put this down inside that button. Make sure it's seated down in there like that. And the talc keeps it sliding smoothly so it doesn't twist as I turn it around. Now I'm not going to put any shellac on those threads. Those threads should be plenty secure enough. And it sounds like that sack is sliding around in there nicely. Give it a push. It seems to be operating properly. Now all I have to do is ink the pen up. Plus, I have to polish the cap. I've done nothing to the cap yet, so I'll do some polish work on that, but it's in pretty good shape. So I'll just do some light polishing on that, ink up the pen, and see whether we've brought this pen back from the dead. The model VS supposedly stands for Vacuumatic Successor, but this explanation confuses me. In fact, the whole pen design confuses me, as it's a dog's breakfast of design and technology elements.
That's strange. All of a sudden, I don't quite feel like myself. Oh, I feel all right, and yet
The pen's overall design is unquestionably from the Parker 51, which debuted in 1941, 6 years before the VS. The Parker 51 is one of the great success stories of fountain pen history, and they made millions and millions of them for an astonishing 31 years. Parker continued to make the 51's predecessor, the Parker Vacuumatic, well into the 1950s, and the Parker 51 had the Vacuumatic filling system until 1948, when Parker replaced it with a new filling system, the Aerometric. 1948 was also the year they stopped making the Parker Vacuumatic, although they were still making them into the early 50s in Canada and the UK. So 1946 to 48 were pivotal years for Parker. They phased out the Vacuumatic, that had been their flagship fountain pen for 16 years, and replaced the antiquated Vacuumatic filling system in the 51 with the new Plyglass Aerometric system in 1948. And in the middle of all this, they introduced a new model called the Vacuumatic Successor that had the cap and body of a modern pen, but the filling system was hardly a successor to the Vacuumatic and more like a throwback to Parker's past. In an era when Parker revolutionized the fountain pen nib by enclosing a hood, the VS sports an open nib. And this filling system is from the 1930s and virtually indistinguishable from the button filler of a 1930s Parker duofold using the same type of pressure bar and latex sack of the old pens. Perhaps Parker was responding to customers complaining about not having an open nib option in the new cap and body style. But why they put a button filler in this pen defies comprehension. And the clear lucite feed, although very space-aged for the time, was a bit of a dud as well, as it got stained with ink and just looked dirty. It was replaced with a black feed in early 1947, which makes this first quarter 1947 VS a little more rare indeed. By 1948, Parker had taken the remaining stock of VS bodies, glued this blind cap onto the barrel, and fitted the pen with the aerometric filler, making it basically an open nib version of the P51. And the update didn't help sales much, and the pen was discontinued in 1949. Overall, the pen is roughly the size and shape of a Parker 51 with a luster alloy cap and gray plastic body. From the top, we see the typical gray cap jewel embedded in the Parker Challenger style clip that isn't as flexible or useful as the classic Aero clip. The clip has Parker written down the middle in very small print and two converging lines. This might have been an attempt by Parker to modernize or streamline the classic Parker Aero clip. It just makes it dull and uninteresting in my opinion. The luster alloy steel cap has a frosted texture to it, which ends with a non-frosted section that gives the visual impression of a cap band. The barrel is straight to here, where it tapers away gently to the rounded end of the blind cap. The seam of the blind cap is almost invisible. The cap slips off with the same clutch mechanism as the Parker 51 to reveal the 14-karat gold Parker, roughly number 5 size nib, and clear lucite plastic feed. Let's look closer at this nib. You can see it doesn't look like it did before. Very shiny with Parker USA and the 3 dots and 7 date code down underneath the section. And the section is a nice smooth tapering shape. Of course, the nib is now a 1.1 stub after surgery with a slight oblique left slant to it. That was accidental, but a really happy accident. And you can see here, maybe you can't, there, maybe you can see it right there, catch it the light correctly. You can see here why this resurrection was a bit of a roller coaster. After successfully taking a non-functioning bent nib and making it into a spectacularly smooth and expressive stub, I noticed the section had split when replacing the nib and feed. It doesn't leak on my hand when I'm writing. When it sits with the cap on for a while, ink leaches into the cap. The inside of the cap shows a cap liner which slips over the end of the section. And you saw me polishing this section. I got it to the point where it was very shiny and most of the scratches were gone, but after about a week of use, it is now scratched up again because that section sits inside that seal and rubs against it every single time, causing scratches. The plastic sections of these VS models were also prone to ink staining. As I've discovered, as the cap goes on and off, ink spreads from the feed onto the section and stains it. Here's a photo of one on eBay right now that is in a nice rust color, rust burgundy color, and the entire front end of that section is stained with ink. The Parker 51 does this a little bit, that you get some scratches on that hood, but that section does not touch that cap on the inside of the Parker 51 other than on the clutch. Not the case on the VS. The cap posts deeply and securely and feels almost identical to the Parker 51 in the hand. It's well balanced and comfortable. Unposted, the pen is plenty long enough to write with. Now let's see some size comparisons. Here is the 1947 Parker VS with a 1954 Parker Aerometric, a 1948 Parker Vacuumatic, a Jinhao 51A, and a Wingsong 601 Flighter. Now let's look at them posted. And here they are posted. You can see they're all relatively the same size when posted. Now let's look at them unposted. And here they are unposted. This Jinhao 51A is the open nib version of the pen, but you can get them in a hooded nib as well. They are cartridge converter pens and come in a variety of nice acrylics that are really inexpensive at around $3 US. It certainly looks a lot like the Parker VS. And here is one of my favorite fountain pens. I take this pen with me everywhere, and it sits on my desk in my pen stand all the time. It is a Wing Sung 601, which is, in my opinion, the best copy of a Parker 51 made. And that includes Parker's own modern version of the Parker 51. This one is the stainless steel Flighter version, and I've replaced the black plastic hood that it comes with a hood of stainless steel to make the entire pen all steel. I've also replaced the stock steel nib that came with the pen to a bobby bent nib that gives some really nice subtle line variation. And the filling system is Wing Sung's modern version of the Parker Vacuumatic. It uses a siphon tube just like the original, but the pump here is a piston rather than a diaphragm, so there's nothing to wear out. And there's an inexpensive plastic wrench available for disassembly and maintenance of the pump. So this is a huge improvement over the original Vacuumatic, using modern materials and engineering. The plastic bodied versions of the 601 come with ink windows, and a tubular nib version called the 601A is also available, but those nibs are stiff and awful in my experience. Now let's look at some measurements, and I'll be back with a writing sample. And we're back with the writing portion of the review. This is Clairefontaine 90 GSM paper, and this is the 1947 Parker VS. And it has a 14 karat gold, 1.1 stub nib. That little glitch there was me writing at such a low angle so my hand isn't in the camera that I'm scraping the feed on the page. Writing around a tripod and a camera is not easy, folks. Let's check the wetness. It's decently wet, but the big thing about this nib is it is smooth with a capital S. Holy crap, this is smooth.
Holy crap! Holy crap! Holy crap! Holy crap! Holy crap! Holy crap and crap!
This nib is truly spectacular. I'm totally amazed at how this came out. It is luxuriously smooth, like a hot knife through butter, like oil on glass. There is no feedback at all. It is really hard to feel the nib on the page. This is so smooth it might freak some people out. The closest smooth nib to this that I own is my Pilot E95S. And of course, because it's a stub, it has a tremendous amount of line variation. Look at that. That's no pressure. And the ink is, of course, Waterman's Serenity Blue. So the line this nib makes goes from a very thin horizontal to a very thick vertical. The horizontal is 0.4 millimeters and the vertical is 1.1 millimeters, which makes it a Western extra fine to almost triple broad, double broad, or a Japanese fine to off the charts triple broad on my Richard Binder line width chart, which you can find linked in the description below. And for our quote: and for some reverse writing, a lot more feedback, but it does it, and some quick writing. No issues at all. This is like a paintbrush. So what are my thoughts on this resurrection? Well, this resurrection was a roller coaster. First, I couldn't fix the horribly mangled and twisted tines. And I discovered it was because the tipping material was completely missing. Then I was delighted when I took the gut-wrenching step of clipping the tip of the nib off like a toenail and polished it up to be one of the smoothest stub nibs I've ever used. Then my heart sank again when I discovered the crack in the section. Then I was delighted when it didn't leak. Then I was saddened again when I found that the ink was leaching into the cap. Well, at least the pen writes and writes extremely well. I just have to check and do a slight wipe of the section if the pen has been sitting for a while. This has been sitting for just a few minutes under the lights and no ink on my finger at the moment. Perhaps this nib might live another day in another pen in the future. We'll see. And there you have it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell to get instant notifications whenever a new video is posted. And please look in the description for a link to Goldspot pens, as I'm now an affiliate of the online store, and when you shop at Goldspot using my link, you'll be supporting my channel as well at no extra charge to you. You can also join as a member of my channel for only 99 cents a month, and I guarantee I'll answer your comments in the comment section, and you'll get cool emojis, badges, and sneak peek unboxing videos as well. And that just leaves it for me to say thank you for watching, and that's all she wrote.
I made this.